They're guys. They do magic. They are the Magic Guys.
Good evening, good morning, or possibly even good night, friends. Welcome to the Magic Guys, episode 232. It's a special day. Doug Kahn, it is bright and early in Las Vegas. Thank you for being here. Say hi.
Good morning, Nick K.
You look great for someone waking up so bright and early. Are you normally up this early?
I'm not, but I'm a professional fake it till you make it kind of guy. So, we make it work at 5:30 in the morning in Las Vegas. Let's do this thing.
Absolutely. And now we've made it. Some folks are staying up late for it. Scotty P. Guys are in the chat. Good to see you all here, Scotty P. We have Tim Askin. We have Pete Booth. Good to see you, bud. It's been a while. And, Adonis. Good to see you here, bud. Guys, he never sleeps. Guys, I'm like crazy excited for who's coming in today. I saw this amazing talent lecture at Magic Live, and for me, it was the best thing that Magic Live had to offer. If you don't know who I'm talking about, you've seen him cheat death on Britain's Got Talent. You've seen him cheat death on America's Got Talent Extreme and The Illusionist. He's reinvented himself as a writer, hypnotherapist, and the founder of Project Rewire. His story is one of courage, creativity, and resilience. So, friends, please join me in welcoming Mr. Jonathan Goodwin.
Hello. How are you guys?
Buddy, so excited to have you on the show. Thankfully, I was able to get out all my boyish kind of stardom moment that you have before. But for those of you that don't know who you are, please, Jonathan, tell us who you are and what you do.
So my name's Jonathan Goodwin. I am a retired magician and theatrical stunt performer. A lot of people know me for doing dangerous and ridiculous escape stunts. But I'm also a magic consultant and author, and I wear many hats, even though I'm not wearing one today.
It does feel kind of wholesome having three bald guys back in the podcast, doesn't it, Doug?
Testify.
Absolutely.
We should get a card. We should be card carrying magi.
Yeah.
Cool.
We're gonna start making stickers called the Bold Brothers or something of that nature. But Jonathan, as you know, I have 1,000 questions, so I want to take it straight back to the beginning. I've had the pleasure of reading your book, The Methods to My Madness. I was so excited to get a copy of this signed by you when I was at Magic Live. And I think let's just take it from the very beginning. At the ripe age of 7 years old, you're inspired by an amazing magician that was called Norman or Normando. Tell us about that journey of you first getting into magic.
Yeah, I was, I lived in a village that was incredibly small, and there were no kids my age. And so my mum was always trying to get me to do different things and enrolling me in different clubs and classes and this, that, and the other. And one week she said, there's a magic class at your local technical college. Do you want to go? And I said, it'll be for kids. And I was 7 at the time when I said that. But I gave it a whirl. And I was right, by the way. I think it was the oldest kid there.
I love that the perception of magic is ruined by age 7.
Yeah.
I just love what were you supposed to say? There's a magic class. I'm like, is there a bar?
Yeah, well, I know. I guess I would have been interested in learning the real stuff, but I think in my head I thought it would be play sort of magic, set magic tricks or whatever. It was this old guy. His name was Norman Pepperell, and he just wanted to pass on, what he knew and probably earn a few quid at the same time. And he essentially became my first proper friend when I was growing up. He was a cantankerous, grumpy, lovely man, and we became firm friends. And I was really the only student that consistently went week after week after week, and it was like I mean, you guys have had this experience. When you kind of get those little nuggets of revelation, taking you from a complete novice into, having the world sort of completely exposed to you. Every one of those little revelations is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it was like that. It was sort of that incredible gift week after week. So I was so excited for every Saturday to roll around, to go and learn, and then also to kind of show the things that I'd been working on in the week. It was an amazing experience, and I think that having a mentor as a young magician is not something that should be sniffed at. I think it's the best way to learn, for sure. So if you can be fortunate enough to find somebody to actually teach you and be consistent with that, then you're very lucky, and I certainly was.
Agree completely. The best way to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, as your career went on and you were sort of, as you got older, there was a very interesting phone call which you got from the one and only Ali Bongo. Could you tell us about how that progressed and how that phone call came about?
Yeah, there used to be a magic magazine in the UK called Abra, which these days, I mean, it's actually really remarkable to think about it, that it was a hard copy, weekly published magazine. Used to get it through the mail, and I loved it. It was amazing. It was kind of like A5 sort of size. It was not massive, but there was some really great stuff in there. And one day I came across Ali's address, and I wrote to him, not because I had anything particularly to ask him. It was sort of the correspondence equivalent of sort of tapping someone on the shoulder and just going, hi. But he didn't write back to me. He called me. And probably, I mean, by that time I was probably about 10, and he spoke to me for about 40 minutes or so.
Nice.
And it really sort of tells you a lot about the man, that he would take the time to talk to somebody at my level, like that. But he was an amazing chap, and I was very fortunate enough to get to know him as a friend and work with him when I was much older. But he said, there were a couple of things that he said to me in that early call, which I sort of carried with me, and really they impacted much of the rest of my career. He said to me, if you could do magic with anything, which if you think about it is true, and so if you want to be a good magician, you have to know how everything works. And I think that is such brilliant advice, especially from the point of view of being a creative magician, somebody who's going to create their own material rather than just doing other people's tricks. And then the other thing that he said to me was, if anybody ever asks you, can you do something, say yes, and then worry about it. Which, the number of people that I know, not just in magic, but in life generally, who put off doing the thing that they want to do because in some way they're like, oh, I'm not ready for that yet, or I'll do it when, and when sort of is a sort of a false peak, really, isn't it? Whereas if you say yes, then you have a little commitment, you put your foot out of the door, and then you can start to deal with all of the things that you need to in order to make it happen. So I think both of those things were very, very sage thoughts, especially to give to somebody, that the age that I was. They've really helped, I think.
So what I'm also very interested in is that you were practicing magic at that young age, but then there was at one point that you obviously got inspired by doing escapes. Now, was that due to a book that your father gave you, or?
It was several things really. I read a book about Houdini when I was a kid that my dad had given me, and that inspired me to a degree. But I also, I went through a bit of an arc with Houdini, because the sort of the character and the myth of him is a very sort of attractive and appealing sort of idea. Is, I think, one of the reasons why his legend has sustained as long as it has, when a lot of his contemporaries' names are lost to time. But once you sort of really dig in, you realize that actually he was just a massive bullshitter. And that much of the stuff that is sort of purported to have happened didn't happen, or certainly not in the way that sort of history is remembered. And so I kind of put him to one side for a little while. There was a quote of his which I kept, that was quite important to me. I typed it up. I had like a little Amstrad PC, or rather my mum and dad did, and I typed it up, this quote, and it was on my corkboard. And then years later, I got it tattooed on my forearm, and that is, so I struggled and fought. I have done and abstained. I've tortured my body and risked my life, only for that to have one plank on the stage where they must fall back and cry master. And then I have the signature or a copy of the signature. And as much as I sort of became disillusioned with Houdini, it took me a while to realize that actually, even if somebody that you admire isn't the real deal, if they inspired you, it doesn't really matter if it was real or not. And so that was my sort of full circle journey with Houdini. But really, the reason that I got into escapes sort of fundamentally was that I grew to really dislike it. And I know that sounds weird, that you would then take up the mantle of something that you fundamentally dislike. But it wasn't that I just thought it was rubbish. I thought that there was hope to sort of reinvigorate it, if you will, to come up with new ways of creating and performing escape artistry that wasn't, as sort of staid as the stuff that I was seeing. Essentially it was probably like a 5-minute thought process, but that 5 minutes then completely changed my life, because as far as I was aware, escape artists always escape just in the nick of time. Quite often the jeopardy is death, or something that's really very extreme, and they also you are restrained by things that people have no point of reference for how difficult it is to escape from. Most people have never been in a straitjacket, so I don't know why I would clap you escaping from something that I literally have no point of reference of how difficult that is. And actually, I think the thing about a straitjacket is it's inverted. It's gone from the thing that, when Houdini first sort of glommed onto the idea of it, it was, known as this inescapable thing. And now the only time the public come into contact with a straitjacket is when they see a performer pulling one off like it's a sweater. And so it's something that they know is escapable. So those were my sort of criticisms. And so then it was quite a simple process for me to go, well, then let's invert that. So you would not always escape, and the idea of failure being theatrically valid, certainly on television, that the jeopardy would be not death, but pain or humiliation or something that would just be generally unpleasant, but therefore believable, and that I would escape from both jeopardies and restraints that were familiar to people. So the very first one that I did was that I essentially recreated a version of the Andre Cole Table of Death escape, but it was essentially a tied shirtless to a bed with a bed sheet spread out above me, sort of from the posts of the bed, and then my dad, who was my assistant in those days, put a hot iron on top of the bed sheet, and I had to escape before it burned through and hit me in the chest, which I didn't do. And so that was the very first thing that I kind of filmed. And
how old were you when that was happening? What?
Yeah, I was about 20, I think.
What? I was wondering if you were 12, and Dad's like,
No,
"Let's make the iron hot."
Yeah, no, I was older, and the fun thing about that whole process was essentially I became good friends with Darren Brown, and through
Nice.
Darren became friends with the production company and the people that made his show, and they made an Escape Artist special, which they decided to make like a sort of David Blaine escapes kind of, that sort of street magic, mysterious, strange character, and it didn't work at all. So through no fault of the Escape Artist, he's very
Was Darren on this show?
No, not involved in the slightest. But it was It was the same production company,
right?
And and so I was cocky 20-year-old, emailed the executive producer and told him that I thought his show wasn't very good, but gave him the take that I've just sort of given you about how it could be better. And I didn't realize, but he was casting another show, and so he said film something and send it to me. So that's what the reason for the hot iron escape was. And there's an interesting dissection to that, which is that it's Hollywood science. You could leave a hot iron on top of a bed sheet all day long and it would never burn through. The reason that an iron burns your clothes if you leave it on there for too long is because there's an ironing board underneath that traps the heat in one place, whereas with no ironing board the heat will just go through the fabric. And so the iron burning through the sheet was a magic trick. We had to come up with a method for creating that effect, and that was me and Ali Bongo in a rehearsal studio for probably about 2 days with sheets and different irons of different weights and different things, until we came up with something that looked pretty good, which begs the question, at that point the iron didn't have to be hot, if it's not burning through for real, and yet it was, because as much as I was convinced that we could fake the burn through, I didn't think we'd fake the burn, and so I did it actually twice, because the first time I didn't get burned, and I wanted to. I know that's very perverse, but I was essentially proving a point, and if I'm anything, I'm very bullheaded, and so yeah, that was my entry into the world of escaping.
Yeah, if I could just say to your point with regards to Harry Houdini, it was Louis D'Amatos who, in the foreword of your book, said that describing Jonathan Goodwin as a modern day Harry Houdini would be almost a bit of an insult, and I think that's very high praise for what you've achieved in your life, most definitely. Now, we do have a question here for your TV work, and Scotty P's asking, was it you that came up with the name, The 7 Stupid Things to Escape From?
Is that Scott Penrose? No, probably not. It was me. I think originally when I pitched the special, it was 10, and then we worked out that that essentially for an hour, 10 we would end up making them too short. So we worked out that 7 was the magic number.
Let's fill in the blanks a little bit. You have the vision, and boy, do you have a vision, and congratulations on that, because that's what makes high art versus being maybe even a good craftsman. You see something that can be done differently to let the public appreciate it or think on a deeper level. So you got that vision, you swing at the plate for this special. How do you get to coming up with titles for your own television special?
So I sent the video of the hot iron to the producer, and he then gave me a segment in a series that he was producing.
Nice.
That show was called Dirty Tricks. Was for UK terrestrial television, and then my little bit was probably one of the most successful bits in that show, and so they gave me the opportunity to write and pitch a special, and so that was the 7 stupidest things to escape from. At the time, there were a lot of top 10 funniest animal video type shows. Where they essentially are just clip shows, and they get sort of celebrities to kind of comment on them, so it's sort of a show that was kind of lightly poking fun at that genre, because the whole thing was ridiculous, and things that I was doing in that special were kind of silly. It holds one of the things that I from early in my career that actually holds up. It's an interesting thing, the 7 stupidest things to escape from, and what was amazing was the whole thing was created like it was truly homemade, and all of the people that worked on it, of which there were many, they all agreed to not take a credit at the end of the show, so that we could make the credits things like thanks to my mum, thanks to my aunt Elaine, yada yada, like really, really very, very homespun. When actually it was a highly produced TV show. So yeah, it was fun. That was basically my first solo project on TV.
Yeah, if I could make mention of a couple of the just a couple from that time, just to show the level of creativity, because I guess people would just generically think we've got to do an escape, or I'm going to need handcuffs, going to need a straitjacket. It's like, well, what if we put Jonathan on the 15th floor of a building, and we chained him to a trolley, like the type of thing you would like real furniture in, and then he's naked and chained to the trolley, so he's got to escape by the time he gets to the ground level. Great idea. Print it,
Yeah, it was. The impetus is really the jeopardy, because you've got the 2 elements in escapes. You've got the restraint, the challenge part, and then the what are you risking part. And the risk does, it doesn't have to be death. It could be humiliation. So we created a surprise party of family and friends that were coming to kind of jump out and say surprise, but little did they know the surprise was on me. And I was hurtling towards them in an elevator, completely stark naked, desperately trying to put my clothes back on, which I didn't do. And that was the other part of that, was that, if you create the conceit well enough, then failure is okay. And what it has the factor of doing is that it gives you that level of, I don't know what's going to happen here, which was missing, I think, from escapes. Most of the time, if you see an escape artist escape, they're going to escape, and so it basically takes all of the excitement from what should be quite an exciting genre away, and you wouldn't, if you were a soccer fan and you knew that your team was going to win every match within the last 2 minutes of the game, it would be maybe exciting and great for a couple of matches, but after a while you'd be like, okay, I don't need to do this anymore. And I think that's where we were with escapes. So it doesn't work in a theatre show, though. I have to add that caveat that works on television, but
And what are the reasons? What are the reasons for that, Jonathan? Like, as far as like, why is it so great for television in this sense, but for his theater, like, is it because there is like you should be failing on the stage? Like, what's the ethos?
I think that there's a couple of reasons. I think that when we watch television, there is a level of separation which also provides us a level of a comfort blanket, whereas in theatre they're present. It's a lot more raw. So I think that the level of discomfort that you get is certainly amplified, and then also people have paid, probably quite a lot of money to see something which they sort of are hoping for professionalism, and so it just I've done it a few times and intentionally done it a few times. I used to do an escape where I would have somebody blindfolded holding a rounders bat, like a softball bat, which unbeknownst to that person had a ribbon attached to it. And the other end of the ribbon was attached to my nipple ring. And I was handcuffed, so I had to escape and cut the ribbon before they would take a swipe with the softball bat and essentially rip my nipple off. There was more on a couple of occasions. I attempted essentially to create the illusion that had gone wrong, and that's about the closest that I ever got to it working. But it was still not something that you'd want to do in a consistent way.
Man, I love that dynamic. I love that you're playing in that ballpark. I'm wondering, like, what about like pausing an escape? Like you're in the moment, and so now you call your stagehands out. There's something wrong or something like that, where you don't actually fail, but there's a sense that it could fail, and then you overcome that hurdle to succeed after the speed bump.
I think essentially that there's lots of stuff that can be done that ultimately what you're looking for is that element of the hyper real. I never did this, but I always thought that it would be lovely to do a version. It's quite a cruel thing to do, but in my early days of performing, I cared a lot less about the comfort of the audience, and I always liked the idea of doing a water tank escape, where you have an audience member on stage that is briefed that it is their job to let you out if there's a problem, with the caveat that Houdini always used to have that the guy standing by with the axe or whatever, which is actually a really stupid way of getting somebody out of a water tank if there's a problem, because you're coming out with a ton of water and through glass on stage. I mean, that's a nightmare.
With a guy with an axe on the other side.
Well, exactly.
Here I come.
So here's the key. Put it in the guy's top pocket. If there's a problem, just let me out. And in that moment, you steal the key back out. So the guy thinks he's got the key, but actually he doesn't have it in his pocket. And then later you give the signal of I'm in trouble, and watch the guy, panic, because in that moment, that you can have the stagehand acting that this has all gone wrong, but actually in that moment the guy will believe that it's gone wrong and will not need to act, and so you get that sort of heightened realism. I think it's a bit of a cruel thing to do. I'm not advocating that, but it was an interesting idea. So yeah, I think there's lots of ways of kind of wringing the sponge and creating realism. And then the other one, the solution to it in the theatre show, which I came up with which is that you just change the narrative arc. So that traditionally the narrative arc is, I have to escape before the bad thing happens. But what about, it's inherently disappointing because we all want to see the exciting thing, and the exciting thing is a man sort of jumping out of the way of the bad thing. So my thought process was, well, why don't we have the bad thing happen? And I've got to escape in order to stop it. And so I've done quite a few of those different things. Probably the thing I'm most well known for might end up being I did a straitjacket escape where I was doused in fuel and set completely on fire. And so I had to escape from the jacket in order to put myself out. And so at that point, a few things happen. You get that excitement no matter what, but also there isn't a point where the people can go, oh well, I bet it was a trick, because I'm clearly on fire. You know, in the first 7 rows of the audience, you can feel the heat in a theatre show. So that helps as well. There was a lot. It was a lot of time that I spent thinking about wriggling and getting out of different things.
Well, I mean, I have an abundance of my favorites of yours, which I will make mention in a moment. But before I do, we have a question from Peter Booth, and that is, what is the most impressive escape you've seen someone else do?
Ooh, that's a good one. The escapes that I'm sort of jealous of, probably there are a couple of Robert Gallops that were brilliant. Robert Gallop was and is a brilliant American escape artist, and he did a couple of specials. He was the person that first did the burning rope straitjacket in a way that it was shot so beautifully. The problem with that quite often is that, the people that did it originally, I'm reliably informed that Alan Allen, who was the first person to set fire to the rope in the straitjacket escape, literally was just doing it for real, and that he'd kind of timed it, and the rope was, he knew how long the rope would burn, which to my mind is incredibly stupid. I can say that because Alan's passed, and then the people that sort of put the steel cable through the rope is much safer, but then you don't get that moment of it breaking. And Gallop did a version of it which was lovely, which was that he was hanging from the side of a building, but they put the camera essentially inside the building, so they had a very close-up image of the escape, which quite often you don't get sort of quite sort of long lensy. And he was wearing a harness, and there was a safety line hanging next to him, so that he escaped and clipped into that harness just as the rope burns through. And so you get this beautiful fishtail. And I always thought that was great. That's a really lovely escape. Thanks, Peter, for the question.
The most original escape I've ever seen is where you escape from inside a cow. Yeah.
Well, you haven't seen it. You're a liar, because there are not many people that have seen it, because it was never broadcast. It's one of the few that Channel 4 in the UK has a reputation for being the channel that basically broadcasts anything, and then when they saw that footage, they were like, yeah, we can't show that, and which is odd, because usually if you're a creative person, that they're at some level from idea to realization, there is compromise. That's part of the process. And what you end up with never quite looks like what you imagined, except that looked exactly like I imagined it would. And so it was quite frustrating because we told them what it was going to be very clearly, and they went, yeah, okay, that sounds great. And then when they saw it, they were like, no, we can't.
Is it true this inspiration came from the Jim Carrey Ace Ventura moment?
Sort of. I think maybe the image of the ending, because I escaped through the cow's back passage. But really the inspiration came from the Houdini story about him. There's a story about him being tied up inside a dead whale, which I think is not true. I think it seems more likely to have been a turtle, but there was certainly something that had washed up that everybody was sort of, everybody's talking about because it was a big unusual sea creature that had washed up, and Houdini decided to sort of capitalize on that and put himself inside it and get sewn up. So that was the sort of inspiration, because we can't get a whale or a turtle, but it was actually during the famous mad cow disease in the UK. So it was just a very, very difficult thing to organize for us to do. I can imagine. I think maybe if I went back and had my time again, I might not have done it, because it was a bit of a thing.
That sounds like an understatement.
Yeah, no take backsies. I can't go backwards. So
I think one of the funniest excerpts that I read regarding this escape was that your hand came through, and during this point in your career, your father was part of every escape you did.
Yeah.
So when your hand came through, your dad just came and like shook your hand and was like, "Good," and just walked off.
Yeah, he's a bit of an accidental comedy genius, my dad. When he's trying to be funny, he's not. But at most other moments, he's a pretty funny guy. And so, yeah, he shook my hand through the arse of a cow. That is true.
So as far as stunts goes, you've been pushed the limits for a long time. You've had you've escaped. You've been buried alive. You've been covered in bees. Even attacked by sharks. But is there a stunt that you created that's sort of more memorable in a sense of its challenge?
I don't know. It's difficult. Every single one of them had their own sort of specific challenge. I think the thing that I did that I'm most proud of, that was maybe the most difficult thing I did, was the semi-final stunt that I did for America's Got Talent, where it was a zip line 75 foot in the air from a burning rope, and I was hanging from my teeth. Because that was something that I took a long time to learn how to do and to train to do, and it sucked. And it's one of those things where, it wasn't a magic trick. There wasn't anything that, if I had let go, or if the rope had burned through, I would have fallen. And yet it went off exactly as planned. So that I was quite proud of. Yeah.
All the Iron Jaw stuff that I've read in the book thus far is just staggering. Like, it really is. Even the fact that you want to suspend a spectator sitting in a chair from your feet while you're holding a jaw, like, is that physically possible? Certainly.
Yeah, it is. You would be amazed at the limits of the human body. I mean, it would suck. There's no two ways about it. It would be very painful, but it's certainly something that a human being can train to do. And it's a very rarely seen circus feat. But over the years, people have done a lot. But it tends to be just a display of sort of aerial beauty. It's another way of hanging onto a line or something in the circus. And I thought the idea of making it an escape it would just be such a great image apart from anything else. And so I did it a few different times. I've done it on stage. I did it on Broadway, actually. I did a version of it where I was statically hanging from a burning rope over spikes. So yeah, it's one of those things that was always, in that instance, it was always quite frustrating, because I would be hanging from my teeth. I was hanging from my teeth, and I would do that on tour with the Illusionists when I was in that show, and the escape went pretty well. It was all right. And then for one reason or another, I had to change the restraint that I was using in the show, because one of the other items got changed around, and so I had no option but to change to being hung upside down in a sort of traditional sense, and from that moment on, that escape got a way bigger response. And it was much easier. So in some ways I was sort of happy about it, but I also was frustrated, because I'm like, the thing that I was doing is much more impressive, but that's the thing about creating work that the audience has a point of reference for. You quite often, you'll see jugglers talking about it, that they'll do this incredibly difficult trick and get golf claps, and then they'll do something that's sort of much easier, but perhaps a bit more showy or familiar or whatever, and the audience will go nuts. So sometimes they don't know what they don't know.
But so how do you prepare mentally and physically for these types of really dangerous scenarios?
It's always different. Depends on what it is. Essentially, that I was a big proponent of chunking, so that you'd prep in a piecemeal form, do little bits of it, and then eventually sort of string it together. But every time it's difficult. With Iron Jaw, it was a process of literally training like you would train any muscle to get stronger, to just sort of increase tension over time. Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly, by that point in my career, I wasn't sort of practicing picking up in handcuffs or anything like that. That stuff I had down. But it's more about the picture frame at that point than the actual content of the picture, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And so after this obviously very successful career of traveling all around the planet and doing these performances, it was during October 2021 when we had this awful accident. And, it was amazing to be able to see what the actual finished escape was supposed to look like.
I should have clicked it live.
It was an amazing escape in which you were hanging from the center of a crane, and you were going to escape, and on either side of you were two vehicles that were going to crash into you if you didn't escape in time.
Yes,
there was a point in that where you knew it was going wrong. Like, what do you recall from that moment?
I knew that it was going wrong. But in that moment, there was no time to do anything about it. I think that if in a situation where you knew that you were going to be hit by a car, let alone two of them, you would have some sort of adrenalized response. But my response was that I just went, "Oh, bleep," although I didn't say bleep. And then my world went black. And the next moment that I'm conscious of, or I remember at least, was on the ground. But I must have been awake, because I didn't hit my head. I fell, the cars hit me and collided and exploded, and then I fell. But by that time, I wasn't over the airbag anymore. And so I fell 30 feet head first to the ground, but I didn't hit my head. I tucked and broke both my shoulders. But So I guess at some level I was conscious, but I was certainly very fortunate, and then I woke up on the ground, and it was at that point that I realized that I was paralyzed, that I couldn't move my legs. It's an odd thing that happens when you're in a situation where you're doing that kind of performance. You sort of shoulder all of the stress in the environment. Everybody else is just sort of, holding a camera or standing and watching or whatever. And in one moment, the whole situation reversed, because I was the only person that wasn't that harbored no stress, and everybody else was incredibly concerned and stressed. In that moment, I was bizarrely quite relaxed. There's nothing you can do about it, so you just have to wait for the helicopter to come. But I don't remember being in any pain, particularly. I guess shock and all of that sort of kicks in. The body's quite good at looking after itself in those sorts of situations, or at least as much as it can. So yeah, there was the beginning of a long journey of recovery. I was in hospital for 6 months essentially after that.
Wow. The spinal surgeon said it was reportedly the worst injury he'd ever seen of this caliber. It was the worst spinal injury he'd ever seen. And do you think that through all the other escapes you've done in the past, and maybe the minor mishaps, like, when you broke the ankle doing your first Flying Fox escape, like those little progressions of where things can go wrong, little breaks and so forth, that kind of made you go like, it's just another break, it's just another situation, we're going to get through it. Like, do you feel like there was a level of conditioning that you sort of prepared yourself for?
I'm not sure that I would have gone, this is, that I would have diminished what happened to me in that moment. I think it was more about an acceptance of what had happened and being okay with it. I'm very much a Stoic, and the Stoic philosophy basically teaches you to live in the moment, and that we can't control the past or the future. We can only live in this moment right now, and also that we get to choose how we feel about things, and I think that you could look at all of the things. I broke both my legs. I injured my liver. I destroyed one of my kidneys. I broke my ribs, punctured a lung, broke both my shoulders, and suffered this complete spinal injury. Been told that I'd never walk again. And so you could look at all of that and think, oh my God, I'm so unlucky that this has happened. But you can take all of exactly the same circumstances and think, oh my God, I'm so lucky. I shouldn't be here. And the difference between those two, with all of the same circumstances, is a choice. And so I make the second choice. I'm incredibly lucky, and that fortune colors every moment of my day now.
Yeah, those are really inspiring words, just like in your lecture. And from there, you've now transitioned into hypnotherapy, writing, and presenting. Can we delve into how you've transitioned from the escapes now into into what you hope to achieve with Project Rewire?
Yeah, I hypnosis. I did a lot of consulting for different performers, including working with Darren and different people. And so hypnosis was something that I was very familiar with, and have always thought that it's sort of been mishandled by the entertainment industry, because for the sort of cheap laughs that it gets in a college show, all of those are essentially undermining what is a pretty incredible therapy that could help a lot of people. And yet the therapeutic side of hypnosis is not its shop window. People don't get to see that part. They get to see the guy in the spangly jacket who's going to make you think you're a penguin. And so I always thought, well, that, it needs a bit of a rebrand, somebody to sort of champion it and make people think about it in a different way. And so many people said to me after my accident that I should, use the opportunity and my outset and mindset to help people. And so that was maybe a thought that I had, was that maybe I could do that. And so, yeah, I have a hypnotherapy practice, which is an online practice called Project Rewire. And that's basically the idea is helping people kind of come to hypnotherapy with a bit more of an open mind than perhaps they would. And part of that is really explaining to people what it is and how it works, because I think even a lot of hypnotherapists like to sort of sit behind the veil and sort of claim to have sort of this power that only they have the ability to kind of wield, which is obviously all nonsense. And so that's been a fascinating journey, and I'm very excited to continue it, actually. So that is one of the things that I'm doing with my time these days. I'm spending a lot more time. I basically thought that my sort of relationship with magic was done. I didn't sort of anticipate, couldn't continue to perform, and I was okay with that. But in the last year, I've had so many people come to me and ask me for help with regards to different projects, theatre projects, TV projects, and I directed a show which was in the West End of London last year that just opened up on Broadway, and so I'm doing a lot of that work, which I really enjoy, and it's quite good fun to kind of use all of those muscles in a different way. And then the other thing that I'm doing, which is perhaps my favorite thing that I'm doing, is writing. I've just written a novel which is about to be published, and I've written a few different television shows. I have a show which is essentially a dramedy, a comedy drama that is being currently considered by Netflix at the minute. So I'm hopeful that they like that enough that they'll buy it, and we can make that. Would be fun. So,
it seems like your creativity just has no limits as to how much you create. And one of the things that I was in awe of when I read that you can create like 5 or 6 ideas a day. Is that that's genuinely what you can do? And where does it come from? Do you look at a spoon and go, "Oh, I have an idea"?
No, I mean, I think that necessity is the mother of invention. So, when I think that if you set yourself the task of writing 5 ideas or 10 ideas, in a day, then you will do that. That's not a difficult thing. Doesn't mean that they're any good. And certainly I would not have claimed that I would have had 5 good ideas a day. But I think that the process of writing ideas for magic, and it's actually, if I ever write another book, this is something that I was kind of contemplated writing a book on, is sort of the creativity of magic. And it's not something that is spoken about very much, but it's about making sure that you have all of the tools in your tool chest. I firmly believe that writing effect first is the right way around. that there are, I think you can always tell when a trick is written method first. And don't get me wrong, there are some great tricks that are written that way around, like Jim Steinmeyer's I'm gonna blank on the name of the trick. What's the name of the trick? Rick Thomas does it beautifully, where you have the plank in the middle of the cabinet, and the girl goes into the. Do you have any sense of what I'm talking about? It'll
I'm a
come to
close-up guy. I have no idea what you're talking about.
the one where you fold up the box, yeah? What's it called?
Oh, that's origami.
No, that's origami. That's
damn it.
that's not the same thing. No, there's a really great. I'm saying it's really great, and then I'm going to kind of criticize
Yeah, it's like a shadow box. She vanishes into the middle, kind of, right?
It isn't. You can really see her clearly. That it's not just a shadow thing. It'll come back to me, or somebody will message, I'm sure, what it's called. But it's a Steinmeyer thing, and it is essentially a trick with a big mirror,
Right.
that's very, very cleverly manipulated, and that a lot of Jim's stuff works in that way, and for a fact, you can just tell that he's gone, oh, that's a clever principle with a mirror. I wonder if we could do that. Now let's come up with a plot for it. And so what you have is a plot with a plank in the middle of a box that a girl apparently goes into, which makes no sense at all. And it doesn't mean that it's not a good vanish, but it just means for me that I think that if you write the trick plot first, then I'm engaged and drawn in, and I understand where we're going, or I'm kind of intrigued, all of those things that you would want if you were writing a story. And then once you've got your story, then you go, okay, how do we do that? Now let's come up with the clever principle. And I think that's the right way around. But I think that, sorry, I've completely forgotten the question that you asked me, because I got too hung up on. Is it called osmosis? I think it might be called osmosis. There you go. Now I've remembered. Sorry about that, guys. What was the question?
No, you answered it perfectly, friend.
Okay.
It was about transitioning into the Project Rewire, but it actually, I think it goes on to what I think should be our final question before we wrap up, as we've got a few minutes left, and that is that just to acknowledge that your story and your recovery for me was super inspiring, and it's made me want to be a better magician and a better person and everything else. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. And with your story being so incredibly impactful, what advice would you offer to others facing a life-altering challenge?
I would say, I live in the moment, and that goes back to the way that I would tackle the challenges that I encountered before I was injured, which is that if you look at the whole thing, these things are incredibly daunting. But if you look at it piece by piece, then where are you right now? Are you okay? What's the thing that you can do to move forwards? Basically those things, and then very quickly you'll have gone a ways down the road in a way that didn't seem that challenging. That's the thing. It's not allowing yourself to be daunted by the big picture, and I think that a lot of it is about how we look at life in general. I think that if you're experiencing something like you've just been, what happened to me, one minute you're fine, the next minute you're paralyzed. Those are moments that put into relief all of the different potentials that we have at any moment. But we all have those potentials. You know, you as an able-bodied person may never walk along the Great Wall of China. You may never see the Taj Mahal, but it doesn't mean that you wake up every morning sad about that, do you? You get up and deal with the things that you're going to do that day and that you can do. And that's exactly the same for me.
Amazing, inspiring words, Jonathan. I swear, it's just been.
Where do we get that book you have, Nick K? Is that available, Jonathan?
I was going to say, please tell everyone where we can actually purchase this book from. I was lucky enough to get it from Magic Live. I believe I did see it available on your website.
It is on my website. My website is thedaredevil.com, and there's a magicians and escape artists section, which is password protected. I will say that the password is 2 words essentially. A lot of people answer it as 1 word, but it's 2 words with a capital T at the beginning. And I won't say any more, but you know, those of you who go there will understand. I will not pretend that it's not an inexpensive book, but it is also essentially everything that I ever created as a performer. So there's a lot in there.
Yeah, I've been reading every day since I got back from Vegas, and I'm only just shy of halfway through it, and it is just filled to the brim with beautiful nuggets of knowledge, and just it's so remarkable how the illusions that you do in this, the escapes you do in this, are so convincing, and then there's secrets in this that make you go, "Oh, it's okay to put scorpions in your mouth," or you know what I mean? Like it's just.
Yeah, I think that you know, it's one of the things that I lectured about is that I think that magic is most impressive when it is implausible, not impossible. I think those are the moments that you know, that moment of an audience person going, God, maybe that's possible. You know, I think it's why mentalism, why Darren, for example, is so popular and successful, is because he's playing in that space where you think, God, maybe you could do that. And so I tried to sort of put all of that into my work. And so using magic methods for things that you wouldn't necessarily think are, you know, methods, the hot iron being an example of that, but also doing things for real, and as well as putting in methods, because it makes the line wavy, and the audience doesn't know which side you're on at any moment. It makes the whole thing harder to unpick.
Yeah, walking that line of implausibility is such a unique walk, and I think you give some wonderful tips on how to do that in your book. So guys, if you do want to get your hands on it, do please scope out the website. Before we wrap up, just a personal thanks from me. I am so thankful that you've recovered and that you are still part of our magic world, because you are still making it a better place for all of us and just dispensing your wisdom. And it's just nice to know that you're around still. I'm super thankful for that. And even more thankful you took the time to chat to us today, because I would have spoken to you till the cows come home at Magic Live. And the fact that you've given us your time today, from all of us Magic guys, thank you so much for being here, Jonathan.
It's a pleasure, a real pleasure.
Yeah. It is. We'll leave you with the final word, and we'll wrap up the episode. Thanks again.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to the Magic guys for having me on the podcast, and thank you to the Magic community in general. You know, it is a community that has given me so much over the years. That I genuinely have a desire to give back. So if I can help anybody, if you have a creative problem or you would like some advice at any point, then reach out, because I'm always happy to do what Ali Bongo did for me, and to reach back down and help others up and create a level of their own success. My website is thedaredevil.com. You can also go to jonathangoodwin.com and buy my new novel, which is published September the 1st. It's called The Persistence Hypothesis. Peace, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks for listening. It's time for us to disappear now. But we'll see you again on the next episode of The Magic Guys.